that gets into our first round robin question. So these are not uncomplicated titles. Go-to-market strategy enablement, addressable enablement, advanced media. I've shared your names and titles, but I'd like you to tell the audience a little bit about yourselves, and in layman's terms, please. We have a wide range of backgrounds and experiences here. So I'm going to start with you, Kelly, and run down the line.
Sure. Thank you all for having us here today, and we'll continue on the theme from before, your attention. So Kelly Barrett, I'm with Comscore. For those who are not familiar with Comscore, we are a measurement company, so research, analytics, things along those lines. And my role at the company is, technically it's titled product management. When most people think about a product manager, they own a product. Mine's sort of a bit of a misnomer because I don't own a specific product. I more own our strategy across products in the face of third-party signal loss, all of the things that are changing constantly, and what the strategy is around that to continue to bring the best insights and competitive intel and things that we are basically known for. That's me.
Wonderful. Welcome. Nola.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nola. I lead go-to-market at Criteo, which is a commerce media platform, essentially a full-stack offering for the advertising demand side and sell side to transact media. I'll talk a little bit more about it later. But my role as go-to-market really is bridging between the product organization and the sales organization and the marketing organization to really understand what our clients and consumers need and want when it comes to digital advertising, ensure our product teams are well-versed in those challenges and are building the right solutions to meet those needs, and then making sure that we have the right commercialization plans to bring them to market successfully, make sure the sales team understand what we're bringing to market, how to talk about it to clients, and how our customers understand how to use it when they're hands-on keyboard themselves. Over to you.
And I'm David Wells. If you can hear me. I'm an industry principal in the media and advertising practice at Snowflake, which is a cloud data platform. So within the media and advertising industry, I actually own the go-to-market with adtech and martech. So what does that mean? It means all of the various adtech and martech related solutions like identity, data, activation, measurement, and all of our partnerships and their solutions that they're standing up within Snowflake, as well as the marketers that use them. So what we try to do is surface solutions with our partners within AdTech and MarTech that are relevant to marketers that are actually centralizing their first-party data in Snowflake, if that makes sense.
Larry Allen, Comcast Advertising. I work with a large number of media publishers and measurement companies to take advantage of the data that our customers generate on our platform from a video perspective, as well as use kind of the household information that we have on those subscribers to help the signal loss problem that was mentioned, and also really just to provide a kind of linkage to the home. So as clients, advertisers want to activate specific audiences, they can identify the households where those audiences exist, and then partners like Paramount can deliver targeted advertising within their content on our platforms. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is we're partnering with measurement companies to really understand kind of what the consumer behavior is doing in video from a census perspective, as opposed to using just panels. We now use our actual viewing data, bind that with the households, and then that can be used to generate better, more accurate measurement for advertisers.
So Julian, all right. Julian, so internally for Paramount, I do a few different things. One, I help kind of our brands understand identity internally through some kind of capabilities that we've developed. I do kind of business development for Addressable Television, working very closely with Larry and others of that ilk. And I own our customer reporting products and platforms. So if you're investing with Paramount, we've built platforms so that you can kind of follow your transaction models, understand how it works, get insights and other values for it.
Wonderful. So audience, this panel is all about media and advertising technology, how they're working together to leverage consumer insights to succeed and build better marketing outcomes and better experiences for the consumer. That's you, that's us. We consume media every day. I came from the Infutor acquisition by Verisk in 2022. And media and ad tech was a fairly emerging category for us. We didn't really get into the mix until about 2018, 2019. And certainly the emergence of streaming, COVID really accelerated, propelled us into this ecosystem. As a data provider, we sit at the center of it. We power better interoperability. And we really sit behind as the glue between some of these first-party data sets that these publishers are generating. So just to set the stage with a little bit of additional context there, but if I can put one word, if I can come up with one word to explain ad tech, it would be complexity. Which feels somewhat self-induced. You create very complicated technologies, you interact with increasingly complex organizations. Everything we do is quite complex. And then not to mention everything around us is like constantly changing. So I guess I'll start with a personal question, which is, why are you doing this? Why are you in the game? What keeps you in the game? And why is it so damn complicated? Julian, I'll start with you on this.
It's complicated because I like to keep my job, so that's important. I think it's complicated because the media ecosystem is incredibly complicated. So just as a construct, if we are putting out Paramount Plus, in order to distribute that, there's 150 different potential distribution platforms we have to build for, right? With different capabilities and different realities in terms of a development scenario. When you're delivering ads there's different scenarios there. There's different data that you're getting back. That's just in television. Once you get into the digital landscape, there's a lot of volatility there and changes there. So the ecosystem in and of itself is incredibly complicated. Why? I'm not sure that there's a real reason for it. I think it's just kind of the nature of how things have developed over time and the variety of different ways that people consume. And the more change that has happened in consumption and the way that people are consuming it, the more complex the ecosystem gets and the more complex it is to deliver relevant messaging on behalf of advertisers in order to reach the consumer, right? So, I think that's kind of the nature of the ecosystem. It's going to continue to evolve. We talked this morning, obviously we heard Anant talk about the changing ecosystem with AI, and by nature you're just going to have a consistent evolution of the consumer, and by proxy of that it's going to change. Why do I do it? I do it because I love it. I mean, I probably was, knew that I was going to work in media from single digits. What I was going to do, I probably started out thinking I was going to be a filmmaker and ended up in advertising, so not exactly the same. But really, because it's so challenging and because it is so complex, it makes it fun because it's never dull. There's always something to learn, which I think anybody that does this for a living enjoys learning. So there's always something to learn, and because of that, and because of the ecosystem being as large and complex as it is, you're meeting different people and you're learning different things, and I think that in and of itself is a pleasure, frankly.
Anyone want to add to that?
I think that's incredibly well said. Incidentally, I also wanted to pursue film, and this is my consolation prize.
That's a great MLB career, by the way.
But it worked out. I do think the complexity is the interesting part about it. I mean, think about it. We're in a world where we want to allow different companies to collaborate without movement or violation of privacy, and that's an incredibly complex idea to solve. How do you do that? And I think you have to put privacy at the center of any type of solution, whether you're a large media organization or a data provider. And it's not the way that we've operated, and we're sort of learning as we go. However, to Julian's point, which I think is a great one, if it was easy, we probably wouldn't have as much fun. Did you want to add your thoughts?
Yeah, and I agree with what both of you have said, but I think there's also a few other things. I mean, this industry is always fragmenting, consolidating, fragmenting, reconsolidating. And that's because of all the innovation and the creativity that comes with the change that everyone in this room and everyone that we work with across the industry is implementing to make the internet and digital advertising better, easier, more frictionless. but also to answer to the way that consumers are changing their behaviors when it comes to consuming media, when it comes to consuming commerce, right? Criteo is a really big player in retail media and commerce media, and that also, in terms of how consumers purchase products and where they purchase them, has been constantly evolving as well. So we have to stay on top of that, and that creates fragmentation and consolidation. And personally, you know, I agree with, again, everything everyone said. It's fun, it's interesting. The complexity is what makes it something that you can wake up every day and know you have something new to learn. But I also really like the international aspect of it. I mean, it's a global industry. As somebody with an international background, I think it's really fun to be able to work with colleagues across the world and understand the complexity and how that's different in each market as well.
Wonderful. Which actually brings me to a different question I had for you, Nola. So I'll turn it back to you again. So consumer behavior is evolving. What about consumer behavior and consumers interacting with media is interesting or exceptional to you? I always say, look for the exceptional information. The AI will do the rest. We can look at the exceptional information. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to something Anat was saying that a few others have said throughout already the day-to-day. It's about what can we do for you, the consumer, and where are you and how do you want to engage with us versus how we want to engage with you. All of us, we. And I think what's really interesting that I've noticed, obviously there are trends in terms of where consumers are spending their time with search and social and CTV. You know, buzzwords we all know about. But I think what's really interesting is how people are consuming, where the point of sale is happening, and where we need to meet them in a way that's going to create even less friction for them to get what they want when they want it, no matter where they are. So some of the interesting data that we've seen is that, for instance, back to school shopping happened a lot earlier this year than it has in previous years, and we expect the same trend to happen throughout the rest of 2023 for the rest of the holidays and events that are coming. We also noticed that people that are not purchasing earlier are spending that time doing more product comparisons and doing more searching across different retailers to see what they want to buy and doing price comparisons there. So it provides an opportunity for marketers and for retailers to think about how do you reach those consumers earlier across different touch points of the buyer journey, whether that's to sell them one specialized product you're really thinking is the right personalized item for them, or whether that's to increase the basket size. And another really interesting trend, despite everything that happened in the last few years with COVID and everyone working from home and the rise of digital e-commerce in terms of a lot more virtual shopping, in-store is still predominantly where point of purchase happens. We saw 70% of purchases happening in-store this year. And that doesn't mean that digital e-com is not very powerful. It's really about how do you marry those two and how do you continue to connect the dots so that you can help a consumer understand where they can find the products, but also that they can buy it no matter where they are. So some really interesting things we're working on is how do we bring commerce and media closer together? So partnering with someone like Paramount, how do we help them get closer to the commerce ecosystem in a way that's beneficial for their business, but also allows consumers that are there to consume media, but also interested in purchasing something that makes sense contextually with what they're offering, an immediate opportunity.
So how are you building these systems to last, I guess is the next question. So the information's rapidly changing, consumer behavior is rapidly changing. How are you meeting them where they are and getting data getting this data and this information in a fast and actionable way? And anyone can take this question.
Sure, maybe I can take it. So Snowflake is a cloud data platform, as I said. So we're the infrastructure layer that sits atop all the public clouds and regions. And the idea is that it's a shared data architecture, which means that you can share a view of data within your own org or with a partner without movement of that data. So the analogy that we often use is like a Google Doc. Let's say I have information in a Google Doc and you want to access that. I can share a view of it without actually sending it to a destination. And the other thing is that I can put parameters around what you're able to query and the granularity of that, and I can also mask some of the sensitive parts of that data. And as often as I updated that data, that actually gets reflected in that share. And we can also join data. If you have data in your own Google Doc, we can join those different data sets, and we can use query templates to sort of parse the results of that in ways that restrict, or I would say respect, our own privacy guidelines. So you need an incredibly powerful new paradigm or technology to actually allow this type of collaboration. Snowflake is incredibly relevant across a variety of industries, but we really see it taking on a whole new shape in media and advertising, because you do have different, players like, very large publishers, ad tech platforms like DSPs and SSPs, also identity providers, data providers, all of whom want to collaborate, but they want to limit data movement, and they also want to protect their own, IP or the data of their individual consumers, if that makes sense.
That's 100% right. I mean, as a data owner, and we want to protect our subscribers, we definitely don't want any of that data kind of leaving our environment, but yet we want to empower our partners to take advantage of it in a variety of ways. And one of the things I think about with all of the data that's now available to us from a behavioral perspective and consumer transactions is we now can really in a better way, real-time optimize campaigns, so we can think about, how to kind of adapt and evolve a set of creatives. Now because we have some AI, we can actually evolve the number of creatives and actually speak to consumers in different ways based on what the data is telling us. So you can have an overall concept for a campaign, but that campaign can evolve within its own life in order to drive a better outcome or react to information that you're hearing from your consumers, whether that's them actually telling you or behaviors they're exhibiting throughout the content where you're, exposing your messages to them.
The one thing I would add also is utilize all the data that is at your fingertips. That's something that we do. We partner through, whether it's through collaboration or through working with some of our partners down the way there, or the marketers yourselves, and bringing together all of that data and not relying on just one single source is what we figured out is really how to get those more granular insights, the more speedy insights down. Everyone wants to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and having the most data assets and really getting to bringing them together and not relying on just one is it's sort of like core to what we do, and it's something I would put out there in terms of. Like a great example is iOS 17 just came out yesterday, and it's like blowing apart a number of things that are happening in our ecosystems right now. And if that was your one thing that you were relying on for, let's say, tracking your website visitors, that's going to be rough. You're going to see, you should go check your GA or whatever you're using, because if that's the only thing you had at your fingertips, you're going to need to work with partners who have more, and that's going to happen through collaboration with everyone in this ecosystem. So while it goes back to the complexity, simply making those connections is a great future-proofing.
So while I'm on you here, Kelly, I was thinking about this as I was watching Anat's keynote here. We as Infutor now as Verisk are going out, and as I said, this is an emerging category for us. We're servicing the media, the publisher, to power better addressability, households, our adult population, but at the same time on the back end, we need to do that safely, and then we need to measure it. When it comes, you were at TrueSet prior, you had a stint at TrueSet. You've been at Comscore for a long time. You had a stint at TrueSet. And so I wanted you to speak a little bit about what aspects of the data are important as a measurement provider versus someone trying to serve ads.
Yeah. We, as Comscore, as a measurement provider, we sort of sit in the middle of a lot of things, right? So we see it from both sides. There's the sell side, the buy side, the platforms, all of it. We say we have a lot of masters, right? So in a sense, we have to bring all of that data together, but we can't just say, hey, it's all under our roof. Really, you've got to get to what does that consumer's journey look like across the sell side when they're seeing ads. Then they go into the retail world, either the virtual world or in person, and bringing all of that together for that journey. And then, as said before, making sure that we can get to a point where we're just not saying like, hey, all males act this way, because it's not that, you know? So getting down to audiences that really make sense. I mean, I look at some of the things that Gen Z is doing now in terms of their brand loyalty and how quickly that can change. And then they can also forgive very quickly. But if you're treating them like the rest of the population, you're going to miss that nuance and really like miss the boat. So having all of that data and really looking into audience segments, behaviors of what they're doing, and a lot of this is brought together. These are all disparate data sets, so a lot of it is brought together by identity. And then also simply, not simply, this is probably the least simple of it all, but really through data science and having the best talent there to bring all these assets together. And then we even have to, in a sense, sort of undo some of that. So we talk about individuals, but we all live with some other people. So there's other things like Larry and Julian down the road there. They've got a lot of TV viewing. Well, there's a bunch of people on the couch together. So how do you parse that apart and treat them all differently in terms of what they're seeing and what their actions are and things along those lines? So there's a lot that goes into the measurement side beyond just having the data.
I would say it really comes down to accuracy. So kind of the point of the question really is like, if you're just running a campaign and you build an audience and you're trying to reach that audience, you want it to be mostly right, but more reach is better than less reach. And so you can be a little bit wrong. So you can have a segment that you've built and you could, amplify it, if you will, and then run that campaign. But I think if you then are measuring household viewing of an ad, whether it was a display ad or a video ad, and then you want to marry that to some sales outcome or other behavior, foot traffic into a store, you want that to be highly accurate. And so, the difference between using deterministic data to do the measurement and to do the attribution versus something probabilistic for activation and targeting, I think those are okay, like to be different. However, the measurement, that's where we're spending a lot of time with partners like Comscore and others, making sure that the kind of root identity at the household level is accurate and correct, because if it's not, then you're going to be feeding bad data into the front of the system for planning purposes and then ultimately for building that segment that you might scale up in order to get more reach.
Yeah, you nailed it. There's a world in which like you can look at data that's used for reach. Let's go ahead and hit all of you with an ad today. But the accuracy of measuring how many of you actually did that and connecting you to your households and things along those lines, it's almost as though you look at a data set and you have to parse it apart into, do you want reach or do you want accuracy? I'm hoping in a world in the future we can have a bit of both.
Measurement is the one thing that, it's not the one thing, but it's a consistent evolution of what people decide is important, right? So today, for example, there's a lot of, no pun intended, attention on attention, right? And the construct of how do I measure and value attention, and what does that mean in terms of outcome? And now there's a massive initiative across this industry to start tracking attention as a value commodity with which you can start to make decisions on. The level of that is variable depending on the provider that's potentially giving you that information, and there are different degrees to how you measure attention. I can go into a refrigerator, be looking directly at a jar of peanut butter, turn around and ask my wife, where's the jar of peanut butter, right? Because other shit's in my head. Sorry, I cursed, bye. So, there's a reality around that. And so, where we started out in the basis of measurement in the media space is reach, and reach is kind of the basis of it. And I think we're evolving into I don't just want to reach you. I want to know that you're actually invested in what's happening, and I want to kind of have the degree of reality around that. And so, with everything else, the measurement side of this equation is incredibly complex. It's important to, understand the trend lines. It's important to kind of test and try different things so that you can, understand what might be working and using different information directionally to start, understanding ultimately how to get the best outcomes out of the things that you're doing in the investments you're making.
The good thing is that more of the media is now digitally delivered, and therefore there is the ability to kind of stitch it together, right? And if you get to a few kernels of identity or item IDs that can be linked, and you can reliably link them to a household, then all of a sudden the magic really starts to happen. And I think that's what we've been missing. You know, we had this thing called a cookie on the web, and that was like the magic ID. And now that doesn't exist anymore, basically. And so we have to find a new one that is more reliable and actually represents consumers. So that's where we're spending all of our time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I also hark it back to it's about where the dollars are going, right? Because there is no industry without marketers spending money, and there is no marketer spending money if consumers aren't buying products. So ultimately, what everyone's looking for is ROAS. And you have to be able to measure to show proof that you've hit that ROAS, but how a different, advertiser might measure ROAS here is different from over here. One might care a lot more about attention metrics because they see that through their own kind of data science as driving forth on certain types of sales for them, whereas another one is going to be looking at a different type of KPI. So one of the things that's really exciting about commerce media is the fact that it all ties back to the point of sale for closed loop measurement. And it's not quite as simple as that. In some cases, it can be quite simple when it's happening on the retailer site or in their store and they actually know it. And you can tie it back to a variety of different identifiers or an e-com site, for example. But definitely it becomes really interesting to think about how do we tie that all together when we're talking about point of sale on a media owner's site in a creative on a CTV device. And so that's the stuff that gets me really excited. And I know we're all looking to solve for together. And it's all about partnership. It's all about having accurate data, scaled data, and ability to connect that data in privacy-safe ways.
Yeah, so not uncomplicated at all. So we've heard about, we heard a lot of trends this morning. AI, we were talking third-party cookies, certain availability of certain data elements in certain states. So what do you make of all of these trends? What is hype, and what is actually a true game changer or a threat from your perspective? And we can go down the line here. Let's start with Kelly.
Yeah, it's my mind always goes to like the threats. It's just the paranoid self that I have. It's maybe what makes me okay at my job. But the threats are the ever-changing regulation and honestly the lack of being able to measure it, so that there is no sort of referee in the middle to say this is what the value is for you. This is how to efficiently spend your money.
Right. How do you know if you're creating bias based on ethnicity if you can't measure how you're serving ads to certain ethnicities? That's
a really big one, and it's almost this like this vicious cycle, right? Because we have people saying, "Hey, you've got to make sure that you've got X audience covered," and we're like, "Do you want us to get sued? Like, how does that work?" So that's a threat that definitely keeps me awake in terms of measurement. Is how do we continue to be comprehensive and inclusive and measuring everything, in the face of privacy, right? Like, as a consumer myself, that's the way that I want it to be. However, we also need to make sure that dollars aren't like flying, back in, like they would back in the old days kind of thing, like just flying around and doing sort of like Mad Men money kind of thing. So that definitely keeps me, keeps me employed, but also keeps me up at night.
I mean, if you put the consumer first and you get them to opt in with the knowledge of what exactly they're opting into, I mean, it has to be clear. It can't be,
They never really know.
a lot. Well, I mean, this is where I think about the measurement problem. You have to recruit a panel. I mean, at the end of the day, you need a panel. We all poo-poo a panel because we have all this data, but I think you need the panel for calibration for things like ethnicity, where you get clear consent and you actually are engaged. A company is engaged with the consumer or the household, and helping them understand, like, yes, we are going to collect all this information for you. You are agreeing to it, and there's a value exchange for that. Likely, they're getting paid, and so that helps to solve that problem. But it's a very expensive proposition to build and recruit a panel.
Yeah, I mean, I would also add a couple things. So I think AI, obviously, there are threatening components to it, and we talked a little bit about those earlier today, and I think Anat did a great job covering some of that. But there's so much opportunity that comes with that when it comes to media activation and creative. There's real-time audience optimization and predictions. There is the ability to do personalized dynamic creative optimization. These are just like really low-hanging fruit that companies like ours are already starting to dig into and test. And it's going to become even more powerful as we can automate a lot of this in a much more real and scalable way. I think something that I think about a lot is two things. They're sort of related. One is there a future for the open internet? And that scares the crap out of me if the answer is no, having built my career within the open internet. And I ask this because it goes to where are consumers going? And if they're not going to open internet places, then that becomes a much smaller environment that we're all playing in. And how much can we control consumer behavior? That's a genuine question. I get curious about whether we can control it more than we think when we understand the impacts of GDPR, CCPA, and legislation. Where did that come from? Because there was a couple loud voices that then created a movement that scared the crap out of the entire world, and now look where we are. So we have to be really thoughtful, I think, about what's happening and the implications in the future of the decisions we make now and the things we're loud about now.
I kind of come at that from the other side, and I think it's very similar. Like, I worry about platformification, which is basically the opposite side of that, right? It's the consumer only going to these platforms that are then closed environments, right? Apple is basically a platform that is a closed environment. YouTube is a platform that's a closed environment, and they're doing some kind of shady things behind the curtain, and that's not great from a marketer's perspective, but they're so big that you're kind of forced to engage there if you want to reach consumers. And if they're not measured and they're not held accountable, then that's a really scary thing. And as someone who also built their career on the internet, collaborating with a lot of different partners, if there's only 6 companies that consumers are going to engage in media, that's not terribly interesting.
Agreed. The one thing I'll say is, in terms of to your comments about AI and ML, we're seeing incredible uses of ML today on our platform and really advanced data-driven activation. So people many times talk about activation of audiences, whether that's like CRM or curated site activity data through a CDP or composable CDP. We're actually seeing partners and marketers who are matching ad logs to first and third party outcomes to train models so that what's activated is not actually an audience, whether it's a CRM or a curated set of people that have gone to a specific site. It's actually a set of rules that says, I want to target these devices on these days and these geos at these times across these inventory types, and I'm only going to pay this much. And that's where the most advanced perspective and whatever identifiers we have, we can leverage them to power more performant marketing. The other thing is, the other day we were talking to some partners about what they want to do if we lost all identifiers. And they have transaction data, it's a large retailer. And what we said is, well, what if you laid down a groundwork of the US consumer population rooted in PII? Because you don't have the entire US consumer population, you have maybe 60 to 75%. And then you mapped all of your transactions to the US Census and PII. And then you could build predictive models that were privacy compliant at a ZIP +4 level, and you targeted at that level as opposed to individuals. Then you could actually drive performant marketing not only in the US, if you were to expand into other places within EMEA. And the other thing is you could train models as a retailer specific to your advertisers actually on our platform. So the model you'd use to sell Pepsi is different than the model that you use to sell Coke. And it's still privacy compliant. And all of that happens upstream of the point of activation. And they thought that was pretty cool. So yes, it's scary, but I think there are answers. And to tie it back to the complexity point of view, you know, this complexity allows me to sit on a panel with these fine people and talk about what these solutions are. That's why it's cool. That's what gets me up in the morning.
So I'll echo some of what was said, which is the empirical threat is we have an incoherent privacy strategy in the country, right? So you have a multitude of different states with different regulations. And the question is, you know, what's privacy compliant today is not privacy compliant tomorrow. You know, today IP is used, great, that's going to go away. Tomorrow it's identity, maybe that'll go away. What is considered privacy compliant today might not be privacy compliant tomorrow, right? Yesterday's price, not today's price, so to speak. So I think that's a real empirical threat that we have to deal with. Along with, I think Larry pointed out, like the fact that we have, you know, major monopolies that are being unchecked. And walled gardens that are, you know, not necessarily focused on the ethical potential realities and are instead focused on, you know, capitalism. In all fairness, not necessarily the worst thing. But
I think we have one walled garden in the room, so it'd be nice.
No, it's just the fact. I didn't call anybody out individually, but the facts are the facts. And you know, big companies have, you know, big eyes, and that drives big money. But that's problematic if you know, everything is focused there. But I do think that all that threat, so to speak, leads to innovation and leads to new things. And I think that is the hype that is real, right? Is the fact that people like companies like Snowflake are innovating, and you know, companies like Comscore and Criteo are thinking about, you know, how do they adjust their businesses to accommodate this. And you know, we do the same thing. You know, where several years ago we were dependent on, you know, a multitude of our distributors, and we were lacking data. Now if we have our own streaming capability, we're not capturing data and can do and build a lot of stuff that's being talked about using AI, predictive models, and making sure that you're delivering relevancy to the consumer. So I think a lot of the threats lead to a lot of the innovation. I think that's a positive.
Wonderful. I think our time is coming to an end here, so please thank our speakers with a little applause.